What happens when two sisters with very different creative journeys decide to embark on a passion project together? For Heather, creativity has been a lifelong companion, starting as early as 2 years old. For her twin sister, Holly, that passion for creativity and caring for others blossomed just a little later. And now, together, they've collaborated on a new journal focused on mental and emotional health. On this episode of the Wendy Crafts podcast, you'll hear from Holly Roaring and Heather Kell about the origin of their new journal, the story behind its design, and how they learned that the most transformative work often involves a little bit of vulnerability. Hello and welcome to Wendy Crafts, the podcast where we heal through the creative work of our hearts and our hands. I'm Wendy Townley, and for more than a decade, crafting has given me resilience, purpose, and strength. On today's episode, you'll meet twin sisters Holly Roaring and Heather Kell. Heather is an entrepreneur and the creative heart behind her planner business, Kell of a Plan, while Holly is a licensed professional counselor. They've joined forces for a special project, a mental health journal designed to help people on their journey toward healing. We have a conversation that explores the healing power of family, the surprising places creativity can appear in our own lives, and the importance of having a supportive community. Well, welcome back to the Wendy Crafts podcast. This is the podcast where we have conversations about the intersection and the relationship between creativity, our mental health, and really being more open and more transparent about the two. I'm very excited today for our two guests who are actually family. We have Heather Kell and Holly Roaring from the great state of Texas. And I met the both of them through the Go Wild community and Wild for Planners. But I'm really excited today to learn more, not only about their backgrounds, but all of us to have a discussion about a really new, exciting planner and journal that they just launched earlier this year during May, which many of you listening today may recall was Mental Health Awareness Month. So Holly and Heather, thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great having you both. So I really want to talk at the onset, because you are both sisters, you are twin sisters. And just to clarify, which one of you is older and by how many minutes?
Holly is older by 1 minute.
Holly is older by 1 minute, but
okay.
I was chosen first, I guess.
It was a C-section, so I like to say that they just happened to grab her first.
They did. And you were polite. Maybe you were like, please, after you.
Yeah, I was like, here, you go. You go.
Okay, cool.
First is the worst, second is the best.
Polite since birth.
That's right. Or we say you're both equals. We don't want to start any family drama today. Please. We're 2 minutes in. So, well, at any rate, I'm like I mentioned, I am really eager to talk to you both about the mental health planner that you created. But I want to start a little bit, taking a couple steps back to your childhood. And I'd love to know and hear from both of you, what are some of your earliest memories of being creative or having creativity be part of your life as tiny little girls?
I think it's fun. I think it's funny because we're twin sisters and we have a lot of things in common, but I feel like creativity is honestly one thing that we differ very largely on. Like I've always been a super creative person. I'm sure my parents would tell you that I've been drawing on things since I learned how to hold a crayon. Like me and Holly were talking yesterday about this podcast and I was like, joking about this story my parents tell where we were like 2 and I had written Holly's name with a crayon all over some furniture because I always had a crayon in my hand. And so Holly got in trouble because it said Holly everywhere. But then my parents realized that Holly didn't know how to spell her name correctly. She spelled her name Holy instead of Holly. And so then I gave myself away by spelling her name right. But it's like, I've always been the kid with the crayon in my hand and doing something creative. Whereas Holly, like, I don't know. I feel like her answer to this is probably going to be completely different. Like Holly's probably like, I don't know. Last week was my first time being creative. No, I'm just kidding. She's been creative. But
well, it's
funny because...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just funny because I've always been a creative person. And Holly, I think the first sign of creativity that I ever saw in Holly, we were like grown adults.
Probably. I will say in high school, I joined the yearbook staff my junior year. And I remember I was in charge of a certain section of the yearbook that covered certain events like the pageant. And I remember really enjoying setting it. The thing is, it takes me a lot of time to do these things, but me and the section editor, who coincidentally is also named Heather, but this is a different Heather. We would sit there and really try to make, something look cute on the spread. And it was really fun to be a part of something that was then, made and published. And then actually our senior year, Heather joined. And I think that's where Heather really shined with design because, our senior year, Heather was part of the yearbook. And we used to have to hit these deadlines. And our teacher would give us certain pages. These pages have to be done by this day. Heather would just come in, sit down, do them. She'd go to the teacher. These are done. The teacher was like, what? I want you to do all of them. And she was like, they're done.
And that was like my first experience with like designing things, and I would learn that I was really good at it. And I joke now because I remember I had always thought I was going to be a teacher. And I told my mom, I went home one day after working on the yearbook and I was like, I'm going to do graphic design in college instead of teaching. And she was like, no, you're not. There is no future in graphic design. You're going to education. And I'm like, okay. So I did education and I was a teacher for 10 years. And now I own this planner business where I do graphic design just without a degree. So,
So I
found my way to my creativity anyway.
Yeah. And it sounds like, and I want to start calling you Holy for this whole interview now and not Holly. And it speaks volumes, just like, I just love that. But it's interesting to see. And it's also like nature versus nurture when you have that conversation, when you're raised in the same household, but where we find our creativity and what point in life. And I think what I've learned through this podcast and talking to so many guests is eventually, even as women, we find it at some point in our lives, and then it just shows up in really different ways. And for you, Heather, for sure, it's a big part of your business now and Keleva Plan, and we'll talk about that a little bit in shortly. But again, going back to this passion project of yours through the journal, clearly there was a focus on mental health, emotional health. So I'm asking for both of you who are busy moms, working full time, obviously have your hands on a lot of other projects as well. Where do you find your mental and emotional support in your day-to-day life? You could call them allies, you could call them friends, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the biggest things I've had to learn over the years, and especially people listening today, is finding that support system. If you don't have it, is one of the first steps to take on your path to healing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm lucky in the sense that not only do I have a built-in best friend that's been with me since I was born, but now she's a licensed professional counselor so she's been like my mental and emotional buddy my whole life. And now she's like actually trained in it too. So like, I'm lucky in the sense that Holly has always just been kind of and of course my husband's always been, he's like so supportive and so easy to talk to, but Holly's probably my biggest emotional ally, I think is what you called him, but just the person that like, if I've got a vent, Holly's the one that gets to hear it. And that's funny. That's what I would say.
What about for you, Holly?
I agree. And we're lucky. Heather and I are lucky that we live very close to each other now. And that's only been a few years that has been a thing for us since we've been adults and moved apart. But so we really try to take advantage of time when we can hang out with each other and talk more. I definitely agree. My husband too, like he's very supportive. I remember when I wanted when we were married and I decided I'm going to go back to school and get my master's degree, he was like, great, let's do it. Supported me. We also have a really good friend who's actually still in Alabama that I know Heather and I, where we use this video chat app. Sometimes we all chat. I know I chat a lot with her daily. And it's a cool app where we can see each other's faces.
It's called Marco Polo. I'm sure people who are listening have heard of it.
Yeah.
But it's like a video.
I didn't know if I could say.
Oh, you can. Yeah. This is not going to be a sponsor, so thank you.
Yeah. Honestly, that app, I feel like, honestly helps me to still connect with a lot of my friends emotionally because, as you're an adult, I have friends all over the country and really good friends all over the country, but it's hard to get together when we live hours apart. But Marco Polo and that video aspect of still getting to see your friend and not just text them, really, that's honestly a place that I go a lot of times to still emotionally connect with my friends that aren't nearby. I have lots of serious conversations via Marco Polo. Like, it's just adding that visual aspect to your relationship, even if it's someone far away, really, I think just helps make you feel connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Heather, I'm really glad you said that because it is so easy for us to just slip into our text messages or our DMs and start a conversation with a really good friend if we're struggling. But there's definitely power, but I think it also calls us to be vulnerable, even if it's just a one-on-one recorded video conversation, to do that. And Holly, you can speak to this, I think, in a bit too. Whenever I am scheduling an appointment to see a therapist and talk about something tough, I'm nervous, I'm reluctant, I think about canceling. But the minute I get in my car after, I'm like, I'm so glad I went. And I imagine there's got to be some of that relief too that you found when you're able to record a message and be face-to-face with a friend or just talk to them on FaceTime or another video app and just be seen, because that's really what's happening. It's not just the sharing, but it's being just like we're seeing each other today.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's adding that voice to it because when you text someone, things can be misconstrued via text or maybe you're not getting your exact emotions across. But when you can do a video, the people hear you too. They don't just see you, but they're hearing you. And I just think that it really helps to connect with the people in your life, especially the ones who aren't nearby that are even harder to see in person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and one thing I love about the Marco Polo app is that when you get a video, you don't have to watch it right away. And we being busy, and I know sometimes I get caught up in my day, and it may be a few hours later that I sit down, and especially with our good friend from Alabama, I'll see she sent me a message and, I'm going to watch it. And then we can respond. And sometimes we're going back and forth in real time talking. And sometimes it's every few days we're checking in. It really helps. I feel like ever since I've started using that app with her, we are best friends, even though we only see each other.
That's great.
Maybe once or twice a year.
And it brings that accountability piece too in a friendship that I know I struggle with at times. It's like, I'll get back to her. I'll respond to that text. And then it's 3 days later. And then I'm not responding because I feel guilty because it's been 3 days. It's just this inner dialogue that I know I struggle with, and then I'm right back in therapy. So, which leads us, Holly, I'd love to hear a little bit about your choice to make the career pivot to get into therapy.
It's funny, Heather mentioned about our mom really wanting her to go into education because I ended up there as well. And I remember being in college, and I actually started college as a social work major. And that was my first year of college. And I took a basic, social work class that year. And I ended up switching to education my sophomore year. And I think I've always felt like I wanted to become a counselor. When I was in high school, that was my first experience being a client of a counselor. I had a counselor, I believe it was maybe into my junior year, into my senior year of high school. And I really enjoyed just having someone to talk to, just me, because, as you may know, Heather and I are best friends since birth, but we also have 2 brothers. And it was nice to go to a space where it was just me. Oops, hold on. Drop my
good.
my earpod. Sorry, guys.
You're good.
It was just me. I got to talk with her about just a lot of things that were going on in my life at that time. And I remember sitting down and I asked my counselor, how did you become a counselor? I wanted to know, like, what do I do? And I've always had a heart for things. Like, my dad loves to bring it up how when I was little, I would adopt feral animals and bring them home, and they would destroy his property. And he still brings it up, and about just my heart growing up as a little girl, wanting to help things in need. And so I was a teacher for 10 years. And I do think, obviously, in education, you're caring for children, and you do need those skills being in education. And I think that really prepared me a lot to become a counselor now. And even though I was in education for 10 years, about half of that time I was working on my degree to become a counselor. So I do feel like it was a calling for me. I think, I know we talked a little bit about our mom when we met with you before, Wendy, but she was like a unofficial counselor to others, I would say. That was
everybody.
Lived her life on the phone and being there for people. And she did it just as part of her personal life. And I think Heather and I saw that growing up. Mm-hmm. And, it feels like I carry a little piece of her when I do those things. So
that's lovely.
I definitely feel like I'm in the right career for myself, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. And Heather, since you know Holly so well, would you concur with her assessment?
Yeah, definitely. It's. I know we haven't mentioned it yet in the podcast, but for the people who are listening, our mom passed away when we were 18, and it's interesting now that we're like full-fledged adults, just to see pieces of my mom in my different siblings, and like Holly mentioned, like that she got from our mom was just that heart for other people. That's always been Holly's, like. She's always cared about like how people feel and what their feelings are. And so I wasn't surprised when she went into counseling. Honestly, when we were in college and she switched from social work to education, that surprised me. I was like, why are you switching to education? Like, I was in the education program already. So I was like, what are you doing? Like, I thought social work was great for you. And she was, I think it tied into a lot. It was right around the time that our mom passed away. So I think in that period of life, Holly might have been like, I don't want to deal with anyone else's problems. I have enough of my own. Yeah. So, but I think that surprised me more than when we were adults and Holly was like, I'm going to go back to school and be a counselor. I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, our mom's name was Laura, but we jokingly called her Lala, and we told her that was going to be her grandmother name. Mm-hmm. And she hated it because she'd be like, I'm not old enough to be a Lala, but we called her that anyway. Yeah. And when I say we, I mean like us and all of our friends. She was just the kind of person that like everybody loved. Like, I would come home and all of my friends would be there hanging out with my mom. And I'm like, why are y'all here? I'm not even home. And they're like, your mom's home though. And I'm like, okay, like
news alert, we're here to see Laura, not you.
Yeah.
That's so great. I mean, I think that's such a gift for you and your family to have that love and that support in the home, but then I would imagine was also probably a very safe place for a lot of your friends who maybe were not growing up in similar environments. So what a gift that proved to be.
Yes, for sure.
God bless Laura. I'm sure she's here and very proud of you both, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's talk about the journal. I call it a journal, a planner, because I really use it for two purposes, but I have my
I think it's more of a journal than a planner. I think sometimes I call it a planner just because that's what I'm used to calling, but I would say it's more of a journal for sure.
I love it. So let's talk about the origination of it. And like I had mentioned, I am not going to share what I've written in here, but I want to talk a little bit after we hear about it, to hear how you use it in your life. And it's become an unexpected regular piece of my week. So let's talk about the story, where it started.
So originally last year, I released a self-care planner where the focus was more about just like taking time for yourself. And then one of my customers, after they had their self-care planner, requested a mental health planner. And I was like, in your mind, when you make that request, how is that different from what's in the self-care planner? I know it's different. I know it's two different things, but I was just interested from a customer's perspective, like how it would be different. So they kind of shared what they had in mind. And I was like, okay, this is a really good idea. I need to talk to Holly, because at that point I'm not trained in mental health. But my sister is, and Holly and I have worked on tons of things together. We actually used to own a business together. We had an online boutique for several years. So working together is something we've probably done our whole lives. And so I think I don't know if I texted her, if it was the next time I saw her, but I remember I was like, what do you think about a mental health planner? Like, let's talk about this. What would you put in it? And she was like, this is a cool idea. And so we kind of talked about it for a little bit. And then one day I was like, okay, it's time for me to design it, like based on when it needed to be released. Because I knew I wanted to release it during Mental Health Month. So like once I got time to design it, I was just like, okay, Holly, like if your clients came to you and said, I have a mental health journal, what would you hope as a counselor that is in that journal? And she kind of like, shared everything that she would put in it. And then Holly, feel free to jump in whenever.
Yeah,
if I'm
I had opinions.
She had a lot of opinions.
No,
so we ended up she kind of shared everything that she would put in it. And so then I kind of took those ideas and put them into different sections, different like parts of the journal. And then we kind of went piece by piece after that. So I think the first part is, I should probably have brought mine over here. One of them is like fighting anxiety. That's one of the sections in the journal. So for that one, I would be like, okay, Holly, like, what should the section be like from a counselor's perspective? And then Holly would be like, well, you should put tips on how to handle your anxiety. You should put these kind of questions. I don't know, Holly, you could jump in on your thought process through telling me what to put in it.
Well, I think it's interesting you picked that section, because that was probably the section I was the pickiest about the way things were worded. I treat a lot of anxiety as a counselor, and I received a specialized training in it about 1.5 years ago. And I would say once I did that training, it really changed the way I approach it as a professional. And so I would be really picky, even down to words in that section. Heather would send me things and I would say, nope, change this little word right here. I don't like that. Like change it.
I kept calling it, I kept calling it my anxiety. Like, how do I handle my anxiety? And Holly would be like, no, we're not going to say my, we're going to say the anxiety. And I'm like, okay, the anxiety. So just little
things.
That's an
example of being picky.
Yeah.
Like and that's where I could have never done something like this without her, because I don't know those kinds of things. And even like there's in that section of the journal, there's 10 tips on how to tune out anxiety. I would not have been able to give the specific like tips that Holly was able to give. So like, I think I wrote out some tips and then Holly just like rewrote them and was like, no, that needs to be
pretty
like
much.
this.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And then like in that section, there's like some questions that you can journal about when you are feeling anxious about something. And so my role was kind of like laying it out on the page as how it should look as a journal. And I put the questions based on conversations Holly and I had, but then I would design the page and then send it to Holly. And then Holly would rewrite the words basically to
like
make
give
it be
some
what she
probably more structure. Yeah. More
precision. And to make it like be the way that she would say it in a session or
in
something
a clinical
like that.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how the whole planner was designed. Was I would kind of decide how to set it up on the page, and then she would tell me what to change, basically.
Tweak it.
Yeah, and it was a true collaboration. And thank goodness your sisters and you're used to probably having differencing of opinions on probably lots of issues. So from start to finish, from the idea, Heather, that was brought to you by a customer to May of this year, what was the time frame? How long?
I think the customer probably mentioned it to me last summer that she was like, oh, I want a mental health journal. And then Holly and I probably talked about it for a couple of months. I think I designed it, if I have recall. I probably designed it like in November or December, if I had to guess. Maybe it was January.
That sounds about right.
Okay. But it was, I remember it was cold outside.
Fall.
Yeah. And I designed pretty fast. Like Holly was talking about when we were on yearbook staff, that's when we learned that I have this skill to do computer things insanely fast. So I can design pretty fast once I sit down to actually design. This planner honestly probably took the longest to design, or this journal, but that's because it had the added aspect of Holly's brain, where I would send it to her and she would fix it and then I would change it. Because normally when I design a planner, I just design it myself and then I have someone edit it. But this wasn't Holly just editing and checking for spelling and things like that. This was Holly like reading every word and changing a lot of it. So it definitely took longer than our normal journal, but the end product was worth the time because we're both really proud of how it ended up.
You should be. And when I kind of learned about it and ordered my copy and knew very soon that I wanted to have you both on the podcast, I was like, okay, I need to do some research and like get to know this. And as someone who loves therapy but is therapy averse, I thought, oh, well, I don't really need to work on it. I'm just going to read it. And then I was like, no, Wendy, you need to sit down and work through it. And even though it's pretty and colorful and very feminine and like a really engaging experience, I still found myself working through and like hitting some tender spots inside just based on the questions and the prompts. And I'm like, wait a minute, something's happening here, like in a really good way. And as I've mentioned, I've been to therapy over the years and am really a big believer in that. But to do something in such a structured way really got me thinking about how I'm really addressing my own mental and emotional health on a regular basis in this manner. And what I found, especially in the weeks leading up to our conversation today, is I left it on my kitchen table. So I couldn't ignore it. And there were a couple days, I had a couple rough days in the past few weeks. And I was like, I really need to like sit down and work on this. And I didn't want to, but I tell you, after I answered some of the questions and did like the mental health check-in and colored in what face, based on how I was feeling today, it was really insightful. So I'm not the least bit surprised. You had mentioned, Heather, that how successful it's been in its first run. But I'm not the least bit surprised that it's really resonating with customers. Because I will also say, when I was working through it and thinking about a woman who ordered it, who maybe has never been to therapy, this could be a way to get them comfortable with the idea. And then I know you have the therapy notes in here. So maybe like pre-work to do, as you had both, said as you were explaining this in one of your videos. It can also be a tool to take and use during therapy or before those sessions. So
and I've had a lot of customers.
I've
had a lot of customers who have told me that they've taken it to therapy with them, and that their counselors or therapists have all been like, "This is great. Like, keep using it." So, like all the feedback we've gotten from people who actually go to therapy or from other therapists and counselors have all said like that it's really good. And honestly, that's all due to Holly, because I wouldn't have been able. I don't have that knowledge like Holly does to make it be something that is actually going to help people. And I learned a lot, honestly, about mental health when I was designing it too. Like there's one section that we titled emotions, and there's like a feelings wheel in there. And I think at first I had just put the feelings wheel as like the basic words like happy, surprised, sad. And Holly was like, no, let's go deeper. Let's connect more words to that word. So like instead of it just saying happy, we have like playful, optimistic, peaceful. And Holly just was like, I felt like I was kind of her student for a few weeks, because she would be like, it's better if we can, because someone might look at the basic words and be like, well, that's not me. But then they see the word stressed and they're like, okay, that's me. I'm stressed. That's connected to bad. Okay, now I can name my emotion more than just a basic word. Holly was just telling me like it's better for your mental health if you can name your actual your feeling instead of just staying on the surface. And I was like, okay, let's go deeper then. So just things like that Holly taught me about mental health as we were designing the planner that I didn't know ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think that's just such a key piece to it is really giving it a name. It's a wonderful tool for people who've explored working on their mental health, but even better for those who haven't and are just, as I mentioned, kind of struggling and really trust the Kell of a Plan brand and want to explore that. So I'm pleased to hear that it was so successful. Well, Holly, one of the questions that I've shared with friends of mine and acquaintances when we're talking about therapy and the vulnerability and the courage that it does take to sit down and see a therapist. And I do have friends, and I'm thinking of one right now who is very reluctant, even though she is really struggling. And from my experience with a therapist, I know that a therapist can help and at least point anyone in the right direction. So speak to kind of the experience you've had with some of your clients who are seeing you for the first time and who perhaps have been encouraged for quite some time to see a therapist, but now is just the moment that they've decided to kind of step in and get some help and some support.
I think that it is important to mention that there is still a stigma about getting mental health care, and in our society, and I do think it takes a lot of courage to reach out and to make that first appointment. And most of the time, that is the hardest. Like in my job, what I try to do as a counselor is that be the hardest on my client is like them coming in the first time. That the first time they come in is the hardest step to take, and once they're there, realizing that we as people aren't designed to carry our struggles by ourselves. We need someone to rely on. A lot of times we naturally regulate ourselves with other people. If you've ever called someone at the end of a tough day to vent, or if you've ever gone out with your friends after a hard week of work, just to talk about your struggles, that is a lot of times a big piece of what counseling is having a space just for you, where you can talk about what are the things going on in your life, and how can someone who has a lot, not all the knowledge, but a lot of knowledge on the subject, help talk through things. There's been many times when I've had people sitting across from me in session who they start a sentence by saying, I've never said this out loud before, but, and then they finish that sentence and they may tell me something they've never told anyone. We talk about things that they may or may not feel like they can talk about with other people. Or even talking, sometimes we do exercises where they say things to people that they can't say for whatever reason. And so it can really be a place to make your own. And to, as soon as you, for example, I know you mentioned, Wendy, working with the journal Heather and I made, putting that mindfulness in, that work, that effort can really give you that space to have just for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so key. And the older I get, the more that I realize I need to do that, because if I don't, the moments, hours, and the days that follow, like that pain and that struggle is not going to just fix itself on its own. What I'm doing subconsciously is just masking it with other things like crafting or scrapbooking or Netflix, and it will eventually surface. So the more proactive, as you've spoken to today, that we can be in working on ourselves and healing ourselves, as messy and clumsy as it can be, is really in the best. It's for the long run, and it really makes us even stronger caregivers. And I know with both of you as moms, that's a big piece of what your day calls on. And we act as caregivers for so many in different ways throughout the day, and that taps our energy. And so being able to turn to the journal and to work on the coloring pages, which I had way more fun with than I was expecting, is a really great outlet. And there are so many ways that I know we've talked on the podcast with other guests before about how creativity and that type of hobby or practice can be a really gentle way to start working on yourselves. So last question that I have for the both of you is, when you are struggling and you're working through something at home, at work, otherwise that is lingering, and and it's starting to surface, and you've got so many demands on your time and on your mental energy and your emotional energy. How do you individually work through that? I don't want to say how do you power through that, because we know how we do that. We get an iced coffee and like we put on a podcast and get our to-do list, but in a really meaningful way for you both. What's like step 1 for you, step 2 for you, however many steps it takes?
I feel like whenever I'm having like just like a bad day, I'm in a bad headspace, or I'm in overly stressed or whatever might be going on. It's funny because my husband is very in tune with, well, I'm also very open. Like if I'm in a bad mood, you're going to know it. I don't hide it very well. So, but he's also very in tune. He will tell me, like, he'll just be like, why don't you go and craft something? Like, I'll watch the kids. He's like, you go in your office, don't work in your office, just go make something. Like, and I'm like, okay, that's like you've shared, Wendy, like crafting really it can be therapeutic.
Huge.
Like, and so a lot of times, like, yes, my home office is where I work, but it's also where I craft. And so honestly, if I'm having a bad day or if I'm in a bad headspace, I like to come in my office and turn on worship music and craft. That's good. Or call Holly and vent, and then Holly does a little therapy session with me. What are the two?
What a gift to have. It hadn't occurred to me to have a therapist in the family. That's amazing. I'm going to become your third sister now. I hope that's okay.
People either, when they find out you're a therapist, they either want to talk to you or they don't want to talk to you. You know,
Talking
it's usually
about
one of those. It's usually one of those two things.
Yeah. Well, what about for you, Holly?
Well, I think
compassion fatigue is something. I mean, I wrote about that in my master's thesis. There's a I'm sure a heaviness that comes with your job, with your profession.
Yes, absolutely. One thing, I've been in the mental health field now for about 6 years, and compassion fatigue is real. I do think one thing I had to learn early on was that when people, it's a blessing and a gift for me to be that person who people come share their struggles with. And I do have to be prepared. I actually used to work in a higher level of care with teenagers. And especially in those years, you really just never knew what they were going through or what they were going to tell you or what their struggles were. And the same applies with anyone. I had to learn early on to be sure that I could be there for people, but I couldn't take on their problems. I have enough problems, if you will, in my own life, and being able to be there. I'm very blessed that I live close to where I work and going in and out, from mom to counselor, back to mom again, to sister, to, and I know Heather and I have told you that we care for our grandmother as well, and so, who lives near us. And so we're living in that realm of caring for aging family and being parents and managing our jobs. And so for me, I do say I have an older daughter. Well, my older daughter's 9. She has a lot of Heather in her, and Heather have a very special relationship, as Heather's always been. They've been really close, and she is she has a younger sister, and some days she just leaves. My 9-year-old goes up to her room, shuts the door, and just colors on the floor of her room and listens to music, or she loves to design things on Procreate, and she gets inspired, and
she's my
I see her like she is. She this one time I remember I was trying to get her to leave the house. This was a few years ago. She was like, Mom, I just have to make a craft first. I just have to make a little craft and then we can go. And I was like, okay. But for me, self-care is really important. I find I get a lot of joy out of volunteering to help people in my time. I'm not so much crafting and creating things day in and day out, but I do try to spend time with my kids, say yes to things with them, my daughter's really into theater. We spent a lot of time the other day creating a tryout for a theater play she wants to be in. And I told her, I sent the video to Heather, but I was like, I really enjoyed creating that video with you. Turned out super cute. So it was fun to be a part of that with her and see her creativity come through. I know when I first had my older daughter, I kind of found my spark of creativity for a while. I got really into sewing. I created curtains for my house. I made I made pants for my daughter.
She's never been creative ever.
I made pillows.
And then she has this baby. And all of a sudden, I was telling her last night, I was like, you've never been creative. And then postpartum is just like a whole whirlwind of emotions that you go through. And I feel like Holly, that was
I dealt with a lot of anxiety.
But that was like crafting suddenly became her thing. I remember she texted me and was like, I made a shirt today. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, she was getting into sewing. She took my sewing machine and taught herself how to sew. And she's like, I sewed a shirt today. And in my mind, I thought she sewed like a little baby shirt for the baby. And then she sends me a picture of her in the bathroom mirror. And I'm like, what is this? Why did you send me a picture of yourself in the bathroom? Like, what is this? And she's like, that's the shirt I made. I was like, you made yourself a shirt? Like, what? Like, this is not Holly. She's not. But it's funny because like that season of life where she was going through all of those emotions and not necessarily herself, creativity did become like
a
her
safe space.
Therapy during that time.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It did. It was for me. And I was just going to say that I love right now to volunteer and to spend time with people and have friends. I have a play date group through my church, just meeting other moms, trying to just be there for people is and I think that
being with other people right
self-care.
now, we've come out of this pandemic where we were all locked away from each other. And I think that some of us have gotten into that habit of just being alone. And I think that finding those times to connect with people in person again is really crucial. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no. And I think just our conversation today, even though we're in 3 separate locations, I feel close to you both just for us having this conversation. And I'll just end on this as you were talking about volunteering right now is such a passion for you. I'm like, she isn't Holly, she is holy. You are so holy. Well, Holly and Heather, thank you both so much for our conversation today and sharing your story and also sharing with us a piece of you through this new journal, because it has become such a key piece, as I mentioned, for me. And I'd encourage anyone to look it up online and check it out, because any type of resource where we can work on ourselves is just going to make us stronger, better people. So once again, thank you both. I really appreciate your time today.
Yes, thanks for having us. It was fun.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Wendy. Bye.
Thanks again for joining us on the Wendy Crafts podcast. I'd like to again thank my guests, Holly Roaring and Heather Kell, for joining us and sharing their journey on today's episode. It's my hope that today's conversation gave you the courage needed to take that first step toward healing and the creative resilience that can come with their journey. I'd also like to thank and mention that Holly is a new partner with Wendy Crafts. You'll start to see new content from her on a regular basis about taking care of our mental health and our healing. Holly and Heather's new journal is a key piece in working on yourself, and as I mentioned, a resource that can make you stronger and a better person. To get more information on the journal and its design, you can download the PDF in today's show notes. And remember to like, subscribe, and tell a friend about the Wendy Crafts podcast.